from upstairs.
Off to the side, and then you come back, you know?
Yeah, they built it out in the field. They could keep traffic going for most of
Like
the
a little
construction.
timer.
Well, that worked out pretty good for them.
Yeah.
Time to call this meeting to order, our 5 o'clock-ish meeting. Welcome to the City of Mason for our 5 p.m. August 30th, 2021 special meeting of council. We need a call to order with a roll call, please.
Councilmember Nelson.
Here.
Councilmember Chance.
Here.
Councilmember Bradburn.
Present.
Councilmember Stricula.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gill.
Here.
Councilmember Hunterlaw.
Here.
Mayor Grossman.
Here. All right. So item 3 on the agenda today is public comments, and the topics that are permissible, because this is a special meeting, are downtown development and the proposed ordinance 2021-92. Before we start that, a couple of procedural items. We counted our chairs, and we want to be more careful than we were at the last meeting about capacity in the room. So if you could please maintain a seat so that we can make sure our numbers are correct. It's hard to keep track if a lot of people are standing up, in other words. Is there anything else about safety that I failed to mention?
No, just if everyone could actually find a seat. There are some other empty seats. I'm sorry. Yes, if you could just actually find a seat, that would be good. There are some empty seats up front.
Yeah. And any other comments from our law director on topics that are permissible and why it is the way it is today?
No, just as you mentioned, this is a special meeting. The rules, both in the state law and the charter, say that when you call a special meeting, you have to identify the topic, and we are limited to that topic and only that topic at a special meeting. That's why the mayor identified those issues, and I think that will keep us on track for our next meeting.
Mr. Cohen, is there anything you would like to finish up with your presentation? Or you can come up later and be recognized as a member of the public. It's totally up to you. Okay, he's going to wait. All right. All right, so I believe there's a sign-up sheet. And thank you. And we will just get started. Our first one is Lisa Hyam, and then we have Barbara Spaeth and Jim Fox. Oh.
Thank you.
And and before, I forgot one more thing. We have a 5-minute limit unless council wants to change that to a different time, but just so you know.
I know.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Lisa Heim. I'm from 102 East North Street. We've lived in the Mason area since 1989, but lived downtown specifically since fall of 2019. I want to thank Mr. Cohen for giving this presentation. I think it was done well, yet I have a lot of concerns regarding the size going onto the property and how it affects our downtown area. We regularly support the downtown businesses all the way through Route 42 in Mason, and never did I think in the wildest of my dreams that our dream home we were going to retire with would be affected by a project like this, or could be. I would be really interested to get some updates when you answer questions about the map, and one would be exactly where on East North Street that it pours out onto, because I think it pours out at our driveway. I don't think we'd be able to even back out of our driveway in future livings. The other is on the other end, for coming out on Main Street, it shows a 2-lane road, and if anybody's ever turned there to go back to some of the businesses, you can barely get one car in, and there's a telephone pole. And I don't know who would be moving that telephone pole, but I also feel sorry for the 2 businesses or homes. One is a business, one's a home, that are on each side of that, and I really hope that's taken into consideration. Mason, as a city, already has terrible traffic challenges that are being ignored throughout the downtown, and this proposal will create more challenges and more traffic. But more importantly, we don't have safe foot traffic. There are critical issues for both Mason Montgomery and especially Main Street. The contract that I saw a sentence from stated that the developer would do a study after, I guess that is, because I think that's too late. And it's not the responsible, I think it should be the responsible of the city to have done that. Car and truck speeds going through the main areas have the potential of serious injuries. Have you ever watched a family with young children run across the street in front of 2 cities or from Mason Grill across to Whippy Dip or Adesso Coffee as the vehicles going by are going 30, 40, and trucks and maybe 50 miles an hour, and sometimes school buses? Okay, so we talked about that. My other concern would be deliveries for the facility. Where would those come? Where would those go? To pass a proposal without more research to the benefit and safety of downtown, I feel would be responsible, and any member of council votes for it as is, without more research, would be a great concern. I would also like to see the photography that was done be updated, because our house isn't even on there, at least the ones that we were furnished. And I don't think that without really understanding how that all works and how it affects our people, one response from someone was, well, it's better there than on Mason Montgomery Road. Well, I'm not so sure that's true, but maybe there's so much land being used that there's not consideration to utilize it better for the exits and entrances. And that's one of my biggest concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, perfect timing. Thank you, Mrs. Heim. And those concerns are well considered. All right, we have Barbara Berry Spaeth, Jim Fox, and following Jim Fox is John Wright.
Hello, I am Barbara Spaeth. I live at 5343 Chapel Lane here in Mason. Before I make my comment, I just want to address something that Mr. Cohen said. I have a personal relationship with one of the co-owners of Two Cities Pizza. And I think maybe Mr. Cohen, maybe there was some misunderstanding or just maybe not correctly maybe understanding everything of conversations you had. But I know from a personal standpoint that Two Cities was never going into any of your establishments in any of the cities that you have developed. And I also know that the letter that the council members have a letter from Two Cities, and I know what it states, and it basically says, yes, the owners of Two Cities are very much for developing downtown, like everyone is, but they want to do what is in the best interest of the city, and their thought is if this is the project that's in the best interest, they'll support it, but if it's not, they want to do what is in the best interest of the city. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to correct that, because I think that's very important that everybody understands where the owners of Two Cities are really coming from. What I wanted to comment and just say, I know lots of people here are going to have a lot of questions about details and things like that, so I'm not going to get into that. I have a really good friend, Sally Nally, who was not able to be here this evening, and I know many of you are on Facebook. You've been reading all the comments that have been put out there, and there was a comment that she made that I told her I would read. She said, thanks to everyone who is taking an interest in the development in a fun and vibrant downtown Mason. Your input and passion is important. We all have a picture of what that means. It takes time to collect those vision and find compromises that will please the majority. Pray that city leaders stop, slow down, and listen to their residents. And that's what my plea is right here. Why a special council meeting? Why the rush to put this through so quickly? We know nothing will be voted on tonight, but when the council has another meeting in 2 weeks, that's when the vote's going to come up after the second reading. We, as a community, are just now getting to look at the details of this plan. Why the rush? I know as a former council member, you can put this on pause for as long as you want to. And I know, Mr. Cohen, you've waited a long time, but I don't think a little bit longer is going to make you bankrupt, with all due respect, sir. So I am going to plead with you, council members, to please put this project on pause. Let this community help decide with you all what is in the best interest for our downtown. This is so important. This is not like a new housing development or a company coming in. This is going to change our entire downtown look.
Okay.
Traffic and everything. So please, I'm begging you, please pause and care about what these people think about. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Of course, we care. Could we get a reminder of what you saw today and in the exhibits are concept plans? They're not fine-tuned, having gone through Planning Commission and engineered plans. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to create those. So the progression of that will occur once we get past this point, if we can get past it and adopt the development agreement. So what you're seeing, those are not finalized details. The traffic study hasn't been done. Someone asked about that. It's important that you recognize those are not carved in stone plans. Those are concept drawings, and they're going to change. Okay. I believe Mr. John Wright Mr. Jim Fox, followed by Mr. John Wright, and then Kristen Gecky.
Mayor, if I could follow up on your comments. When we saw that last slide that Eric had presented, it talked about, at least it said to me, that we're kind of painting a vision for Mason, for downtown Mason. I think we're visioneering here. We're trying to say, what's the vision of what we want to happen? And we're not finalizing those plans in this project at all. We're just saying, this is a good vision for where we want downtown Mason to go. And I think that's important that we understand. This isn't final. This is just a first step to say, yes, we want to move forward to develop our downtown. So thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Fox.
I appreciate Council's visionary approach, but I would like to point out that this is one man's vision and not an overall community vision. It looks to me like this is very much predominantly a residential development. There are 15 to 20,000 square feet of commercial. That does not sound like a lot of commercial to me. Have we ever given a tax abatement for a project that is predominantly residential? Not to my knowledge. We're looking at a property that he has offered $100,000 for. That's about $26,000 an acre, if my math is correct. It's valued at $400,000. Have we ever had a commercial real estate appraisal on this property? That's the tax value. That's the Warren County tax value. That is not a commercial real estate appraisal. We developed a stormwater utility when I was on City Council several years ago, and according to the ordinance, there would be no retention and detention, if I'm reading it correctly, but there would be a cash in lieu of. I'm not sure what the impact it would be on our storm sewer project or system. Why are our permit and tap-in fees to be directed to a downtown development fund that could potentially benefit this development? And according to what I read, it could very well turn right around and benefit this development. Has the city calculated the impact of free memberships to the community center for residents? Has the city determined the cost of relocating above-ground utilities to below grade? And all this combines to an overall financial burden to the city that has not been spelled out yet, unless I'm grossly misunderstanding that. Assuming that the first reading is passed tonight, will this be the last opportunity for public input on this subject? This is a very divisive project. I've spoken to a lot of Mason residents and business people who are opposed to proceeding with the project as proposed, and I have yet to speak to anyone in favor of giving away property to a developer. Can anyone speak to downtown business owners and residents who are in favor? I have not come across any yet. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I have one more point, since I hopefully have a few seconds left. What, if any, recourse does the public have if this ordinance passes both readings? Thank you.
This ordinance, like any other ordinance, if it's adopted by council, it's always subject to a referendum by the public, just like any other regular ordinance.
Community center memberships, I just want, when I hear something that's misunderstood or not correct, I'm going to do my best tonight as the chair to correct the record. On the community center memberships, the impact of that is that Mr. Cohen's company will be providing, he'll be purchasing community center memberships for his tenants up to 90%. So the impact on the community center will be very good financially. That's part of the development agreement. And then the impact of burying utility lines is something that's long overdue for the entire district, in my view, and we've said that out in the open. And that is something that we could consider doing tangentially to his project. It would be a good impetus to go ahead and do that. It would not be just for his project, it would be for the whole area, and it sure would clean up the way downtown looks and functions. And as you can see already, it was done between Mason Montgomery and the plaza and up around, how far up is it? So, I mean, it looks so much better and functions so much better. So I'm all in favor of burying utility lines. So that's why that came up in the development agreement. All right, next in line is Mr. John Wright, followed by Kristen Gecky, and then Mr. Mark Hackey. Welcome, Mr. Wright.
As she mentioned, my name is John Wright. I've been a resident of the City of Mason since 1980. Mr. Fox has touched on just about every point I was going to touch on. Couple questions that I want to pose to council is, you're going to give away these membership to the tenants. How many memberships per apartment are you going to give away?
Those
You
are
got
not
5
yet.
people there, do they get 5 memberships?
No, sir. The developer must purchase them and give them to his tenants as part of the development agreement. So that helps fund our community center out of the developer's pocket. They're not a gift.
Okay, all right. In here is talking about a corridor study on Main Street. No mention is being given to looking at the traffic study for Mason Montgomery Road with traffic that backs up twice a day beyond the bus barn at 7 o'clock in the morning, and now you're going to have these added vehicles in this development adding to this. How is that going to be controlled? Are we going to put in yet another stoplight on Mason Montgomery Road? Are we going to put in a lane roundabout? Or how is this going to be handled to handle the traffic situation there? Mr. Developer, Council, can you give me an answer?
We are looking at ways to address the traffic issues in downtown Mason. Again, those issues are long overdue. The city is committed to studying the traffic carefully and paying for our own traffic study of that district. There are ways to alleviate the strain there. I asked our city engineer today about how many cars pass through the intersection of Mason Montgomery and 42 daily. Would you mind?
Yeah, our last traffic count that we did was about 14,000 on Main Street and 14,000 on Mason Montgomery Road each day. So I would say.
When was that
13,
done, just for the record?
That was a 2013 count. And
I
so-
think that's long over. I think that's a little long overdue, and you can't go by those numbers.
Right.
Today's counts may actually be a little bit lower, But they've been pretty steady, the last several counts we've done.
So we're saying 8 years ago was the last study that was done.
No, we're not. saying it's the last study.
2013?
No. The last traffic counts that we did internally were then. And we don't have all your traffic questions. We don't have all the answers. There's a lot of work to be done if this was to move forward.
All right.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Mr. Wright. Glad you could make it. Ms. Gecke, Mark Hackey, and, Minda Bauer Cornett is after Mr. Hackey.
Hi, I'm Kristen Gakey, resident of Mason, and I wanted to just let council members Stricula and Nelson and Chance know that we appreciate that you called this meeting, because without you pushing for us to be able to speak, we wouldn't be able to speak here, so I appreciate that. And to Mr. Cohen, thank you for doing your detailed work. It does look like a beautiful plans, but I do have a lot of the same concerns as many of our citizens just regarding that traffic. I'm not going to keep going over that, but because of the traffic issues. But one thing that's near and dear to my heart, where that property is I've been part of a local organization for years with my kids called Acting Up. It's a local theater group. And we put on shows for our community. There's usually between 60 to 90 kids in each show. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, we had a fire in Lebanon where we did most of our set builds and things. And graciously, that place on Church Street, that nondescript warehouse, is where we have been doing our rehearsals and set builds for our next show. So it's not just, obviously, having new development there is great, but we're also displacing a local theater group, and we know we are in a temporary space. One thing, it would be wonderful if council could look into possibly helping out this organization in the future. We kind of now will, if the plans then go through, we'll be scrambling for places to practice for these kids. We do our shows usually at the Mason High School or Mason Middle School, but everything's volunteer run. We raise all our revenue ourselves and no one gets paid. It's all a volunteer-based organization. So that place on Church Street right now has lots of kids in there who come excited every day to do what they love and do the craft that they love. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. I'm not against the development in downtown Mason at all. I think it's very, very important. I just don't know why, up until this point, it's kind of like all of this came to a head all of a sudden, and I feel like we didn't have any other input from maybe other developers or anything else to see if there was any other options too. And another thing I just want to point out is there is a business that I've gone to a few times. I don't really know the owners, but the Common Brew, and I was concerned when they were trying to possibly expand on their property, that to me that sounded like a great option to have that business and to invest in that business and give them a little piece of that property that they needed to expand and for their business, because I feel like that's what kind of Mason's all about, is some of our small businesses in the community. So anyhow, I just wanted to bring some of that up, and I do appreciate council's time.
Thank you. Mr. Hackey.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Mark Hackey. I reside at 3620 Dunlop Court. Back in 2017, during the May Chambers Meet the Candidates Forum, then candidate Honer Law stated that no development should take place in downtown Mason until the city had developed a master plan for downtown. In 2019, during the May Chambers Meet the Candidates Forum, then candidate Brad Burns stated that no development should take place in downtown Mason until the city had developed a master plan for downtown. Additionally, he stated, and I quote, "As far as downtown development, I think council and the public need competing ideas of what it might be and not just lock into one idea or the first person that comes in with a project." Interesting, since there have been no competing ideas and we're locked into the first person's project. During the same forum, Mayor Grossman indicated that any downtown development should be done with direct input from the Maid CDC or some other non-city entity. Where is that input? As of this date, there is no master plan for downtown, yet Mr. Honerlaw has publicly stated that he will support it. Additionally, both he and Mr. Bradburn voted for the original legislation to work with Mr. Cohen to push this project forward. How can you support this development when you've already stated you don't support development before we have a plan? This deal is simply bad for the city of Mason. Our city has a very strong tax base, so there is no legitimate justification for granting so many concessions for this property. According to the drafted legislation, Mr. Cohen will be required to pay $100,000 for a piece of property that the city has invested roughly $2 million for. I'm not a CPA, but that's roughly a $1.9 million loss in my books for our taxpayer investment. And to top it off, that $100,000 that's being paid is going into a downtown development fund that will potentially provide improvements on the Cohen project. Additionally, this project will remove what little public parking currently exists for the East Main Street businesses. Although the legislation states some of the project parking will be made available for public parking, it also indicates that this will be at days and times that Mr. Cohen chooses, and that it will not materially interfere with the parking spaces necessary for normal operation of the residential apartment units. So bottom line, there will be virtually no parking for East Main Street businesses. I want to be clear. I am all for developing downtown, and the Cohen project might even be the right project for our city. What doesn't make sense is giving away a piece of property that we, the taxpayers, paid $2 million for. Mayor, you've stated ad nauseum that you have worked to provide transparency in our city. However, your actions are far from transparent. You've hidden behind executive session and stated that the public will have input at the first reading. You then scheduled the first reading at a special session and didn't provide any time for public.
Mr. Hackey, I'm going to stop you right there, because remember how I told you if you could pause the clock, if something is not true, that I'm going to stop and correct the record, because that's my job as the chair. We don't schedule public input at first readings. Council discussion and public input normally come at a second reading. However, we have been receiving public input from you and from the MAID CDC and many members of the public since, let's go back in time, November 17th of 2020, when we brought this out to the open. Hiding behind the doors of executive session is not true, and it's not appropriate, and you know it. May 30th, the bulk of the negotiations were done as expressed by our staff. It is now, what, August 30th? So we got June, July, August, we got 3 months. We have not been rushing. We have not been hiding. We are forthcoming. I did not schedule this meeting because I didn't even think of it, because normally the public input would come during the second reading. And to mischaracterize the way I scheduled the meeting with no courtesy call from 3 members of council who scheduled this one on their own, to create to create the illusion that somehow I was excluding the public is wrong and inappropriate. So, Mr. Hackey,
I just want
we're going to press.
disagree with
you are not,
well,
you
so
are
I
not
think we should
recognized
just,
by the chair.
That's okay. I think we should just allow our residents to speak, and
You
we
are not
should
recognized
speak
by the chair.
because we don't really have the right to tell them how they think or feel or how they perceive.
He's allowed to feel the way he
So I
wants to
think
feel,
we should just
but
allow
it is
them to
not
speak
fair to
without being interrupted by you. Otherwise, we all have to chime in on how we see it. So let's just allow them to
Ma'am.
speak, please.
You're not recognized by the chair.
Let's allow them to speak.
The speaker is addressing the chair and the council. Mr. Hackey, you can continue, but I just want to make sure that the public understands that Mr. Hackey's statements are false. He's directing them at me, and
Not
that
false.
needs to be made clear. Could
They're
we
not
press
false.
play on the timer, and how much time does he have left? Okay, you have about 1 minute and 40 seconds left. We'll round it up to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Well, I completely disagree with your statements. Those are my opinions, and I'll state them again if I have to. Let's see, where was I? Oh, well, this goes right to my point. It wasn't until 3 other council members called for an additional special session that public input time was ever granted. How is this in any way consistent with your statements? You've already addressed that. At the very least, this project needs to be postponed until professionals who actually know how downtown planning and development work and they can help provide a plan for moving our city forward. You owe this to the taxpayers of Mason. You, Mayor, Mr. Honerlaw, and Mr. Bradburn should actually do what you said you would do when you ran for city council. Thank you.
All right, next on the list, audience, I know you know better. Next on the list is Minda Bauer, followed by Jim Spaeth, and then Jeff Nesbitt.
Hi, I am Minda Bauer Cornett, and I live at 5083 Concord Hill Circle. To me, it feels that the mayor and some of the other council members are trying to change the downtown with no consideration being given to the current businesses, residents, and our concerns. I don't understand this sudden rush to start this project. I know you say you've been talking about it since November, but we were not advised of that, to my knowledge. And I'm wondering if you're trying to get this started soon to avoid the new zoning regulations that were shown and discussed at the August meetings that we attended. There will be a minimum of 15,000 and a maximum of 20,000 square feet of commercial space. That's a lot of commercial property right in the downtown area. And I'm wondering if there has been an impact study as to how this commercial space will affect the current downtown businesses. The current plans will necessitate individuals or families interested in renting each unit to have an annual household income of $75,000. That's a large income. I mean, most of the people I know don't have that kind of an income every year. And I'm wondering why we can't build something that would also include people who have less income than that, but who are wonderful people and would love to live in Mason. Since the city does not have an overall master plan for the future development, it seems logical that we should get a citizen-approved master plan in place before making any of these drastic changes. Life has changed. While I understand that development is always going to be considered, I would like to feel that it is not just change for change's sake, but that any development should take existing businesses and homeowners into consideration first. Developers live for change. It's how they make their living. I understand that. Mason has grown by leaps and bounds in the last several decades. However, I hope that responsible, intelligent people in our government will not just approve any change without very careful consideration of the current business owners and families. I sincerely hope that you, our city council meetings, will think a lot longer and harder on these items before authorizing these changes. I would personally like to thank Ashley Chance, Diana Nelson, and Josh Stricula for setting up this special meeting so residents could voice their opinions and ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spaeth, Mr. Nesbitt, and then, okay, it's Jenny Jones. Is that correct? Hi, Mr. Spaeth.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello. Council members and public, I'm here not with my clerk of court's hat on today. I'm here with my Tucker's Whippy Dip hat on. I'm the face of Whippy Dip. And yes, I understand for the last 23 years we've had an issue with people running across Main Street and trying to figure out how to best do that. And I would like that to be part of this discussion as we go forward. I certainly appreciate Mr. Hansen's explanation of where we are in this project. I'm not so sure that everybody understands having public input at a or at a second reading rather than the first, because quite frankly, as council knows, I would say the vast majority of everything that comes across here is done by emergency reading. There is very little input from the public. I served as the Deerfield Township trustee for 15 years, and I kind of wish maybe we had done that sort of thing because it would shorten up meetings drastically, but we listened to the public and we dragged those meetings out. And that's all my biggest concern other than parking, because we worked pretty hard and thanked the city for putting in a 19-car parking lot behind the Mason Grill that serves our East End businesses, and there weren't quite as many when that parking lot went in. But now we have Deso next to the Whippy Dip. We have the Common Beer Company across the street from us, and they weren't active when that all happened. And now I see that parking lot going away, and I wonder where those 20 spots are going to be. Will they be available to our businesses and this, that, and the other? Those are the things that I want this council to think about. The traffic study and the infrastructure, I would hope, would be in place as much as possible early on. I understand that we can't do that with everything. I would love to have that money, or to know who controls the downtown community or development fund, who has a final say,
The city,
that type of thing.
As it's written in the development agreement, it's all controlled by the city.
All right. Well, that's important, because then you answer to us as residents. And not only do I run that business at Tucker's Whippy Dip, I also grew up a half a block from there, what is now a vacant lot at Kings Mills and Main Street. So myself and my family have got a lot invested in this community, and I see a lot of friends who I grew up with, and we are natives, and we welcome projects like Mr. Cohen's. Goodness gracious, if we were still a town of less than 5,000 like we were in 1965, where would we be? No. My father was active, and his council members were active in putting sewers in this town so that we could grow this town and grow it the right way. And so I want that to continue. That is my dream, and we continue to welcome people into the community. We just need to do it the right way, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Mr. Spaeth, and we are committed to studying and improving traffic and parking, and I pledged that we would have a first reading and a second reading, and I'm keeping that promise. So we will have more opportunity for community input at our second reading. All right, next on the list is Jeff, Nesbitt, Jenny, and then Sherry Taylor.
Name is Jeff Nesbitt. I live at 116 East Main Street, the house that's going to have to be torn down in order to put the road through. So I guess you're going to take that by eminent domain. I don't know how that's going to work. What's the property worth? What am I going to get back out of it? I'm a little concerned.
Okay, we'll pause your time. Are we tearing down a house? I think you may be mistaken, sir. I would just want you to know. Can you guys help with this?
Yeah, the development agreement does not anticipate using any property other than what was shown on the map, which is owned between the city and the developer.
You can't get 2 lanes in between my property and the one next to the cigar store next to me. You can't hardly get one car out.
I don't think anyone's anticipating putting 2 lanes on that roadway.
That's what it shows to me. Ingress and egress off of Main Street in between 116 and 118, I guess it would be. Is that, I mean, am I seeing it wrong? Did I see the drawing wrong?
The anticipation is that that section of Church Street, what thing you're talking about, would be vacated. Now, that was one of the difficult items here, because before it is vacated, we need to reach agreement with the developer and surrounding property owners on how access will be maintained.
Okay.
But what that means is that that would no longer be a public roadway if this went that path, and it would be an entrance into the development.
Okay. It would be an entrance into the development. What about an entrance into my house and an entrance into the Pleasure Inn, which I also own?
Well, that's what I referenced before the vacation, and how we tried to structure this is before the vacation is approved by the city, those issues need to be worked out.
Well, yes, they do. The other issue I have is, and it's probably my fault for not paying more attention to what you all do, but I had no idea of this project until Thursday. It's a little tough to react on anything given basically a business day and a half worth of notice. Don't really appreciate that because I am greatly affected by it, obviously. Probably as much, if not more, than anybody else in this room. So I do have a concern. You know, I spent a long time, I lived in Mason now for over 35 years, spent a long time of my life working hard and being able to acquire a business in downtown Mason, being able to acquire the house next door. It took pretty much everything I've worked my entire life for. And it makes me nervous to see that there's a good chance that this is going to impact me greatly. So that's my concern. That too, and would it hurt to just slow the train down a little bit? Look at it all, because I really don't even know all the, details. And I'm sure all the details aren't worked out because this is preliminary. Looks like a great development, wonderful. Maybe at a little bit too large scale, but that's my opinion. The other thing is, I'm gonna get on the parking. I'm lucky enough to have 18 spots. I'm one of the lucky ones in downtown Mason. But I still my people use that lot behind Mark's, the Common Brew. They use Church Street. They use across Mason Montgomery. All in the little small things that we've done to help the people in downtown Mason. I see that going away. If we lose the 20 spots behind the Mason Grill and it moves back to the development, now the development's probably going to have a green space, so then the parking would be on the other side of that. I don't know. It looks like it shows garages and then there's some open parking. 20 spots that may or may not be used by the public. That's still kind of iffy. It's going to be used, if you're going to build 160 units, I don't know anybody that's going to move into those units, especially a married couple that only has one car. So you take 160 units and 80 of them have 2 cars. That's 160 parking spots, plus you got another 80. You're looking at 240 to 250 spots needed, and we're going to have nowhere near that. I just don't see it as being well thought out in that regard. I appreciate everything. I want development more than anybody else. I would love 160 people within walking distance of my bar. Hey, $3 a beer, come on in. But at what price? And I think we're just going a little bit too fast. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
It's nice to meet you. Mr. Nesbitt, it's nice to meet you. I've never had the pleasure. And I didn't know who owned the Pleasure Inn, so that's really terrific. Thank you. And I was going to ask you, how many seats do you have in the Pleasure Inn?
How many seats?
Yes.
Well,
About 140? No, under 40. Oh, okay. He's got seating for under 40. You don't have to be under 40 years old. Okay. Whew. Okay, so I think it's going to get crowded in your establishment if this progresses. Yeah, but we're going to make sure that we take good care of you and everyone else if we move forward with this. We're going to be very, very careful. All right, ma'am. Oh, it is Jenny, correct?
Yes, Jenny Jackson, 5754 Richmond Park. I've been a resident for a little over 15 years. I will admit I am really new at paying attention to what you all do, and I appreciate what all of you do. I would not do it, so I appreciate your willingness to. And I'm sure there's a lot of factors going in that I have not, I obviously would not know or understand with my limited understanding of what's going on. However, I became aware of this project just a few days ago due to some community outreach kind of stuff. And you know, I'm all for downtown Mason getting some revitalization and some new businesses. We have been wanting that forever. My husband and I have taken to going to Liberty Center if we want to do a pub crawl, and that's sad and shows our age. So, you know, it would be fun to have that here. Mr. Cohen, developers get a bad rap. I'm sure you do a good job with what you do. I have no idea what the implications of a structure or development like that would be. But here's the thing where I'm confused. And I have dabbled in watching a few of these meetings online. The optics, so I'll say my perception here, is that there are some people on council that are really trying to push this through quickly, and that there's like no transparency. Now, I say that not being overly informed, but just the optics are that there's something shady going on. And I'm not accusing you of something shady, but I'm saying if you're just Joe Blow at home and you're watching this, you're like, gosh, what is the big dang hurry to push this through so quickly? I thought I read somewhere about something about a decision being made within 2 weeks or something, and it just seems crazy. Also, you guys should know there's an impression that a lot of you on council don't give a rip about downtown Mason. And I don't know that that's true. I've not met most of you, but that's the vibe we're getting. You know, so my question is like, what in the world? Why would you not want to call a meeting and have people giving input? Why would you not want to slow it down a little bit and get everybody's buy-in? People would be excited about this. But right now, y'all are like the bad guys on a Hallmark Christmas movie. You know, like we're like the big, like, you know, the people come in and they have like a big conglomerate dude come in. That would be you, Mr. Cohen, you know? And the people who are charging against it, you know, they're fighting and eventually they fall in love with the developer and there's a dog and somebody that looks like Santa talks you into your senses at the end of the movie. So I don't know. I would just love to understand. I can't imagine that you were all a bunch of slimy, vindictive people. I'm sure you have a story and a reason, but it seems like we're not seeing that. So I would love for you to help us understand, and it's going to take more time than you have tonight, I think, what your motives are, what's in it. That's all I've got.
Thank you. That's a great nickname, Hallmark Jenny, but I do have to remind the audience, you know, we can't be giving that type of feedback, although it was wonderful to hear from you, and it's great to meet you for the first time. I'm glad you came. And hopefully we'll have a Hallmark movie ending someday. Ms. Taylor, glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I actually wanted to start, I have a procedural question. What are the rules on presentations from external entities?
Well, we are not accepting flash drives and technology hookups, so we're asking you to bring hard copies, and you can put it on the projector and put them up there, which you know. And it's not for the purpose of censorship of your information, it's for the purpose of protecting our equipment from viral loads, if you will. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It's
Okay.
just unclear to me why Mr. Cohen was allowed to give a PowerPoint presentation when the developer at the last meeting, as well as myself, the meeting before that, there was a different rule. So I'm just asking for future knowledge what the rules are as an external entity who will probably be back to present.
Okay. Well, we've had these documents for quite some time, but can you answer that? Can you shed some more light on?
How staff has tried to bridge that gap is that when a person is invited or on the agenda to present to council, and we're aware and we get a copy of that presentation via email, then we're able to set it up for the meeting so it's ready. So,
Okay.
Now, if we're not prepared for that, then we're stuck, you know, with that rule. What we try and provide, or what we provide, is a document camera there, so if folks have a hard copy, if they walk in with hard copy, we do have other options.
I appreciate that. I wasn't aware of that for my presentation, and I was on the agenda last month, so I just wanted clarity around that. So,
Okay, so if she had emailed it to staff early enough, she could have shown it electronically? Is that what you're saying?
What we've tried to do, it's not spelled out in the rule, but yes, if someone's on the agenda or is invited to present and we have their presentation in advance, we can make sure that it's suitable for the equipment.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so
Got it.
next time, you can make arrangements.
I appreciate that. Just seeking clarity, so.
Thank you.
Okay, so, again, my name's Sherry Taylor. I think it's important to note the people who've been advocating for development, growth, density, and change in the downtown area, none of them are satisfied with where we are at this moment, and I would just challenge council to ask yourselves why. As we're hearing over and over again tonight, this is not a situation of anti-development, anti-growth, anti-change for downtown Mason. We've all been advocating for that for a really long time. This is a situation of people looking around, asking themselves how we got here in this exact moment that we are in. The first opportunity for the public to have a conversation on a project that sits at the intersection of nostalgia and progress, that encompasses 11 parcels of taxpayer-owned land, just 5 days after a proposed massive zoning code update that the community also had the first opportunity to discuss. Special council meetings called unilaterally with no public input on discussions that their outcomes will lead to demonstrative change. I can empathize with Mr. Nesbitt. All business owners right now are dealing with the most difficult economic situation they've ever been in, and to receive this kind of a proposal at this stage of the game and to have to stop all of their business operations, greatly empathize with them and feel their pain around that. But I guess my question is, as we've heard over and over again, is why did we need a special council meeting tonight? When all of you were running for office and you were asked how you would go about prioritizing success for our city heart, when you were asked what your role was and how you would play it when it came time to play it, is this the moment that you saw yourselves in? Is this how it's supposed to be? I'm not here tonight to speak to anything with the specific development project being discussed, because I honestly just think the cart has gotten way out in front of the horse on this one. I'm here to strongly suggest Mason City Council just pause and give the people who live, work, play, and own property in downtown the sufficient time to have their say about what their city heart should look, feel, and act like, truly have the vision. Downtown Mason history has shown us clearly this moment we are in is not the way to get to progress. We laid the foundation for how we should all work together through the 2018 Charter Amendment, which many have heard as Issue 4. We created that opportunity as a city and a community to work together in a very different way than we ever had before. We constantly reinforced Issue 4 does not make change happen for downtown, but that it would start conversations about change with the community first. We made promises to our community together. Our community trusted us in the direction we were proposing when we tackled Issue 4 together. And unfortunately, we are failing on our promises to our community. We feel this entire approach being taken on downtown, everything, zoning changes, approach to development on publicly owned land, the process has just gotten sufficiently off track, and it's going to guarantee that we're going to make the promise that we made to the people of Mason to engage them when we got to this moment. We're concerned some massive mistakes could be made, and we're here to help you do better, because that's what good partners do, and that's what we promised. We had great momentum going into 2020, strong relationships, a new approach underway through a new entity, and then the pandemic struck us all, and unfortunately it forced all of us to take a pause on this. And those of us who had been prioritizing this, working on this for years, we changed our position to respond to the needs of all of our hurting businesses versus solely focusing on our downtown district. We took a pause, despite what we really wanted at the time, because it was the best thing for our entire community. And we are asking Mason City Council and our government to do the same. We've gone on record with all of council on how we can approach downtown Mason development as a community. As we shared back in July, our top priority was to ensure that the entire neighborhood knows how to get involved and engaged before we even start the planning process. It's time to pause on taking big action and prioritize getting back to the table and pulling together as a team. I'm not aware of any community engagement on this project since last November when the discussions began, so what an opportunity to start. It's not too late to change the trajectory of this process and the ultimate outcome. Our ask is that you just take a brief break while we continue to work through public engagement efforts, and then allow us to share the outcomes with you in a way that's determinative rather than overlooked, as what we've experienced so far. We're certain that's what the people of Mason want and deserve, and we'll be happy to help you deliver it for them. We're your partners.
Miller,
Yes.
I apologize for the interruption, but you've come to the end of the allotted time.
Yep, I just have one last thing. which I'll just leave council with, is please just consider how the 10,000 people who voted yes for downtown Mason this opportunity are feeling about this, and let's just take the time.
Ms. Taylor, would you mind if I ask you a couple of follow-up questions?
I actually would prefer to make sure that everyone here gets their opportunity to be heard. I'd be happy to have conversations offline if
That's fine, but I don't think it's clear to the public what organization you represent, what organizations.
So I'm a resident of Mason. I represent I'm the full-time paid executive for the Mason Deerfield Chamber of Commerce, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for MAID CDC.
Okay. And when you talk about public engagement input efforts, when did those begin? And which entity began those?
Which time, I guess. I mean, that's what I mean. This is like a...
I kind of recall it starting around 2018, and the MAID CDC was forming, and you guys were talking about it, and you were getting input from council. I remember a work session about this. I remember a work session in Deerfield that you had, and I'm just wondering if you can provide some context to the public about when that process began, because I think it began before 2020, even though I recognize you had to take a pause in 2020.
Yeah, we started on it in 2019, in the summer of 2019. But I mean, it's an ongoing process for us. Community engagement to us is not like it's not a check the box in a project. It's forever. So that's why I'm asking like which time, because I think this is an ongoing process for us.
Okay, and then on the community engagement part, which is great, because we want to be engaged with our community, but the development part, audience, the development part, what is your experience with development and the CDC's experience with development? And I'm assuming that that is the crux of the input that you're trying to get. What is your experience as developers?
I mean, developing community development, your questions are so vague.
Any
I mean,
state development?
I'm sorry?
Any real estate development experience with any of the members?
I mean, as you know, Mayor, the entity itself is a new organization in the region. So commercial development as an entity, no, we don't have any experience.
Anybody in your entity experienced in that?
Are you not?
I'm sorry, this is really inappropriate.
Okay,
So-
I'm just trying to add some context. I think that's fair. It is fair to add
Sherry, we just
context.
want to say,
I'm sorry.
Sherry, thank
Okay,
you so much
I'm
for
not sure
representing our
that
community.
reaction,
You don't
but-
have to answer these questions. Thank you so much for coming.
I think it's okay that she answers the questions. She's very capable and competent.
Mayor, can I ask a question if we're asking
Hang on
a
one
question?
second.
Could you give the
It's-
definition of what the chamber does? Or maybe I ask this.
It's
is
never
it-
appropriate
is it
to take the floor
advocate
when
for
you've not
small-
been acknowledged by the chair.
Mayor, can I say?
You have a chair, and you need to wait. Okay, I'm not trying to insult Ms. Taylor with these
You are.
questions. Unless the answers are not sufficient somehow to you, I don't know, but I think it's important for the public to understand who is getting the public input. She's talking about we, but if you're watching on ICRC, how do you know? So it's important to provide that context, and it's important not to interrupt in the meeting. So we now know that she is the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and she is the coordinating director of the MAID Chamber CDC.
The MAID CDC.
And I really appreciate you answering my questions. Let's go ahead and move on to Stuart Cowan, Gina Sanders, Christina Meyerhofer. I would advise the audience, please remember the rules of decorum, and I'd also remind council what the rules of council and decorum are. Mr. Cowan, thank you for coming. Welcome.
Good evening, council, mayor, public. I am a longtime Mason resident. Matter of fact, I remember distinctly those time frames in which 5,000 people were a lot of people in Mason. So I am in the business. So a lot of you know me. I'm a builder, developer, et cetera. So I'm going to ask questions differently than what the public is going to be asking because I'm more concerned about the infrastructure parts of the puzzle, et cetera. So one of my main concerns, and this is for clarification, is parking. I thought I heard 20-some spaces, 30-some spaces that are not set, or excuse me, are set aside for the commercial development part of the puzzle. As we heard the gentleman from the Pleasure Inn, I mean, he's got 19 spaces and he overflows. So if you're talking about 20,000 square feet, my guess is he's only probably got 2,000 square feet, maybe if he's lucky, 3,000 square feet. I don't know how you're going to get those people to park. Number one, even if they overflow the parking area, which is set aside for the residents, now you're going to spill into the side streets. So that's East North Street, Cowan Drive, Church Street, up and down, up past the school. I mean, we got a great parking lot up in the school up there that you might be able to use that sits empty 90% of the time in the old Mason Central building. But beyond that, then comes traffic. So I was in front of this council a few years back when Mr. Cohen and a couple of his partners were doing the apartment complex behind, so I'm not sure why there's not a readily traffic study available at that from that project. I thought it was done back then, if I remember correctly. I could be completely wrong about that. But I argued at that point in time for council, excuse me, that you had 2 lanes and you created a choke point by allowing that development to be so close to the street. Well, here we are. Now we got all this other traffic that's happened in since, and now we're going to throw even more traffic on it, and there's no way to fix that choke point. You are going to continually, for here and forever, have 2 lanes of traffic unless you put some kind of bridge in order to get a double-decker going through there or something. I don't know how you're going to get traffic north. So whether it's 14,000 cars, 20,000 cars, it doesn't make any difference. Traffic getting in out of East North Street, which, by the way, the developer is projecting you're going to dump a parking lot out onto East North Street, is impossible to get out on most of the days. And it doesn't make any difference if it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, it is hard getting out of East North Street with the amount of traffic that runs up and down Mason Montgomery Road. And then you add the Kroger. Everybody loves Kroger. Everybody's got to eat. However, their distribution center out there, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, they run trucks up and down that road, which makes it even more difficult. When it's school's in session, it's even more difficult. So without going on too much further, one of the things I did not notice on the drawing, or the concept drawing there, was a detention pond. I'm already in a situation where I'm directly adjacent to this piece of property with my property, and we are constantly inundated with the heavy rains and stuff that we've had, which does a great number to that down there. So while a detention pond would be a great thing, you've also added a lot of different stuff to that scenario. Sewer runoff, or excuse me, storm sewer runoff, sewer capacity, water capacity, all of those things are extremely important, adding another 200 residents to, or whatever that number happens to be, for the parts of the puzzle. My last thing on my list is 4-story buildings. My guess is this gentleman probably can't make a 3-story building work, but why not a 5? Why not a 10? I mean, you know, well, let's build a skyscraper. My problem with the whole look of the development is that 90% of the houses that surround this development are ranch houses, and they're going to be dwarfed by everything around it. So I think from a design point of view, I think it really hurts and kills the neighbors that are been here and been here for a long periods of time, whether it's a new house or newer house that I live in, or a newer house that the Heims live in, or the house that my father built when, you know, back in the 50s. So it doesn't make any difference. They're all backing up to this particular place. And the poor Dumfords, I mean, they're going to be right behind that. I mean, you're going to be able to throw rocks down onto their patio from up at the 4th story up down there. So I just think the whole development part of the puzzle, the physicalities of the thing, while I understand why he wants to do so, because he needs to make money in order to make the project work, I just think it's overblown and oversized for the area in which it is. I actually looked at...
Sorry, Mr.
McCowan.
I've come to the end of your
All right,
time.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. It's great to see you again. All right, Gina Sanders, Christina, and then Annie Droege.
I feel pressure to sprint in case my time started over there and not here.
Take a breath. You're fine.
Okay. I'm Gina Sanders at 221 Kings Mills Road, and I had something prepared, and so many things are flying in so many directions. I think it reiterates my biggest point that I just don't feel like, as a resident, I've had enough time to process everything that's happening, and it does feel fast regardless of the timeline that's being said. Living here for 20 years, 6 years right here in the mile, and in the last couple years getting really engaged, I have not had any viewing of this prior to now. And lots of things are coming up for me, including that my property is swamped 24/7 with rain. And I think about all this stuff and I'm like, can I call the city and ask them to put a retention pond or sewer drains by me? Because we're drowning on our property, and this all really concerns me privately beyond what I have to say here. I really just wanted to come to say tonight, I agree with Cohen. Thank you so much for recognizing the power of community and unity in your presentation. The power of community is with us and that surrounding property that's owned by us, like everyone in this room, not 3 or 4 people on Mason City Council. So really, the partnership is between the entire community and I appreciate understanding that relationship now, because I didn't understand that before. And I'm wondering if many people don't or didn't know why that Cohen is the first guy in. It makes sense. He owns property right there. We do need each other. So hopefully we can consider that. The number one thing I wanted to say was, please pump the brakes here. We have a golden opportunity right here and now to do something remarkable in this property space that has the potential to be remarkable for America's playground. Something that connects what we've created for generations to the future and what we aim to be in the future forever together. And what we've seen tonight is something that we have seen in 3 other towns surrounding us. And I just don't know that this thing is for this space. This is the heartbeat of our community. And yes, maybe that would be appropriate on a million other city-owned places in the mile. But this space, we don't get it back once it's developed. So I ask you to pump the brakes and consider if this project, as undefined and concept as it is right now, is it the project that goes there? Maybe it goes somewhere else. And maybe all of the other priorities everyone is talking about, I get dry mouth every time, parking, safety, activity for the community, arts, entertainment, restaurants, things that draw the people who have lived here and invested here for generations to the heartbeat space of the community versus adding new residents that could be added in many other places in the downtown mile. What concerns me the most about all of this is the process by which we have gotten to this point so far. When you talk about public input and first readings and second readings, I can guarantee you majority of the public doesn't understand that process. It's the community conversations. And I have to defend Sherry a little bit. I'm a part of those community conversations. I could care less that she's part of the MAID CDC. I was talking about having community conversations to address this and ran into her and was like, oh, perfect. There's already a nonprofit thing that's called a CDC. That's Community Development Corporation. It's a 501c3. And believe me, I don't think she's ever had an agenda. A lot of really things, in my opinion, have gone wrong that have turned this into something it doesn't need to be. It's not too late to get back in relationship together with the MAID CDC, and especially the community who's just now figuring all of this out post-pandemic. I ask you, and I hope I speak your language here, to be servant leaders. There's a difference between leading and pushing things through and being a servant leader and really humbly hearing the public. And I'm just asking you to consider what servant leadership looks like and what integrity and sticking to your word looks like when things have been said in the past and those promises are being broken. I want to believe you so badly when you say these things will happen, this will happen, this will happen. I want to so badly. but it's difficult to trust when things have been
Ma'am.
said in the past.
Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt. You've come to the end of your...
Oh, I didn't hear a ding. Sorry.
Sorry.
Anyway, thank you. Please pump the brakes. We just want to trust you when you make promises.
Thank you. Audience, please. All right. Christina, Annie Drogi, and then Chris Cafaro.
That's a tough one to follow. I did have one question before I get started with my statement, which was what streets would be included in the traffic study? Is it just the Main Street and Mason Montgomery intersection, or would it also include the drive-through streets like Church Street, Concord Crossing that people take on a daily basis?
Kurt, do you want to describe the corridor analysis?
Yeah, there'll be two things that are proposed in the development agreement. One is, as required in our zoning code, and a traffic impact study would have to be done. And one of the things that we do on that is scope the project. It would likely not go all the way up to Concord Crossing Drive, but it would include the Main Street, Mason Montgomery signal, that intersection, North Street, the Kings Mills intersection, and I'm not sure yet how far west it would go, if it would go down to the Main Street Reading signal or not. But that entire area would be looked at with the impact study to see the impacts of the development. The second thing that is proposed in the agreement is a corridor analysis, and that would be basically from the Kings Mills signal through Mason Montgomery Road over to the Main and Reading signal. So that entire corridor through there.
Okay, but not Church Street at this point?
Yeah, and Church Street as well, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Christina Mayahofa. I live on 106 West Church Street, hence my question. We chose to move to downtown Mason in late 2019 for a number of reasons. We looked at neighborhoods like Oakley, Pleasant Ridge, Blue Ash, Loveland, but we decided to make downtown Mason our home because we saw the possibilities of what this city could be. We love the walkability, the small town feel, and especially the community. Since we moved into our home, we have seen a number of new businesses come into downtown: Empanada Zaki, Adesso, Native to Nature, Suburbia Records, Moss and Ivy, just to name a few. Not only have these businesses made Mason home, some others, like the Common Beer Company, are also bringing in new and interesting businesses to our downtown, like food trucks, independent bakeries, flower and book trucks. The vibrancy of doing something a little bit different and bringing new businesses is what we want to continue seeing while still supporting our established businesses in the efforts to grow. Over the past few months, I have heard from both community and council echo that we want Mason to be the next Loveland or Milford. I'm not so sure about that. There is something very unique to Mason, and I think our downtown should reflect this. What this feels like is leading the cart before the horse. The Loveland Strategic Downtown Plan, which was finalized in May 2019, after the Loveland Station was built by the same developer. It's 204 pages long, and I would much rather be reading Game of Thrones than another city's plan in my spare time. One of the top weaknesses was addressed by the public was the Loveland Station scale and design. This was ranked top 3. The other 2 were traffic-related intersections, so it's not a good start. Reading through the community input, I read over and over how the look and feel does not match what Loveland wanted to be. Only 2 mentions of Loveland Station is what people loved about Loveland, because that's where they lived. Out of 500, that's only 0.5%. So is that really what we want here? An apartment or retail space that looks like it could really be located in any generic city, taking away some of the small town charm that Mason has. Council should really take a step back and learn from other cities' issues and mistakes before rushing into development, while discounting city land and necessary tax abatements. We should be finalizing our downtown comprehensive plan prior to making any massive developments that we cannot turn back from. I want to see Mason continue to develop and attract more small businesses. It needs to be done thoughtfully, though, and not rushed through without taking a detailed look at how this affects our feel of our small town charm. We need to continue to support our established businesses as well, because they lay the groundwork for us to have this conversation and to continue growing downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your great questions, too. Annie Drogi, Chris Cafaro, and then Kathy Harbison. welcome.
I'm Annie Drogi. I live at 4509 Estate Court. I would like to start off by thanking council members Stricula, Chance, and Nelson for calling the 5 p.m. special council meeting for the sole purpose of Mason community members getting a chance to provide public input on this development. I would also like to thank every resident sitting in a chair right now for coming out and being part of this process. If you are feeling a bit nervous or uncomfortable to speak, just know you have people silently cheering you on and getting excited to see fellow community members giving input one way or another on something they feel passionately about. It is our right. Let's keep taking advantage of it tonight. Somehow, yesterday, I found the time to put together my thoughts about this lack of community-based process and proposed development. To say it was easy to find time is an understatement. We have worked feverishly this past week to keep the public informed and aware of this extremely confusing timeline of events that have now got us here in the afternoon while people are still at work and getting their children off the school buses. We take pride in keeping the community informed and up to date. They deserve the information in real time and the truth. This next part is my very own opinion as a resident. What has come of this situation is inexcusable. Mayor Grossman, it is blatantly obvious you have wanted to pass this development through without any public input. At the beginning of last week, you called your second random special council meeting to push your individualized agenda with no public input. This speaks volumes of how you handled yourself in this esteemed leadership position. You have always wanted to keep us in the dark about this development and don't care what we have to say. Where has your Mason community mindedness been? Where is it now? I'm having a hard time seeing your heart for Mason. In my opinion, Mason deserves a better community-driven plan and a better leader on council.
Thank you, Ms. Drogi. Audience. Mr. Cafaro, welcome. Yes, you may.
All right. Hello, my name is Chris Cafaro. I live at 4886 Elizabeth Court. I would also like to stress I'm not against Jim Cohen or All right. I would just like to stress I'm not against Mr. Cohen or his development, at least until I saw how vanilla and unimaginative it is. We're the city of Mason. We can do better. Let's all work together and create this vision. I'm really up here because the process stinks. I'm just a resident trying to wrap my head around all this. Mr. Honerlaw, after the June downtown committee meeting, I called you to compliment you because the May meeting was run smoothly, unlike the June meeting, which you were unable to attend. During our conversation, you mentioned this downtown development, and you mentioned you were going to vote with the mayor on this deal. So since then, so this was back in June. Since then, the city staff, who you guys have been phenomenal, Kurt, Eric, is it Jordy and Brian? Jordy and Brian. They've all been phenomenal in passing out information to people who are interested in it. My point is, the city staff has invited professional consultants and organizations to these downtown committee meetings. They don't know what's going on in Mason, but they give their opinion about what they've seen and what they've experienced. These are professionals who eat, sleep, breathe all things downtown in Main Street America. These folks specialize in creating fun and vibrant downtowns. All of these professionals stress there needs to be a definitive process that includes collaboration and community engagement. One of the items a professional brought up is the worst thing a city can do is pick 5 acres on a main artery and put a development in the main downtown center is your first action. So I would like to ask each council member just a simple yes or no question. Mr. Stricula, would you be open to inviting or hiring these professional consultants into your meetings to help you with this development? Mr. Gill, would you be open to that? Mr. Honorlaw, would you be open to that? You can, if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. Mayor Grossman, would you be open to that?
Yes, and we have.
Can you share who the professional organizations were?
The professional organizations, well, we have a huge input study from 2009, and that provides a comprehensive plan. It doesn't have a drawing of specific things in the zoning chart where it's color-coded to show where things can work or types of usages can work. But that gives us data, and that gives investors data to be able to
I've only got 5 minutes. Let me.
Oh, yeah. Well, give
Ms.
them
Nelson,
for a second.
would you be paused for welcoming these professionals in?
Absolutely, and I think in the Downtown Development Committee, we have talked about getting a master plan for the downtown, and we've been asking council to please pause this deal until this master plan is finished. And the master plan is going to have valuable information that's going to help guide our community for the future. So yes, my answer is yes.
Mr. Chance.
Yeah, very similar. Yes, because as we point to all these other cities, which I completely agree with everyone that Mason is different, Mason is better, and I don't need to compare ourselves to all these other cities. But what these other cities did have, they all had a master plan. They all had a master plan that they followed, and so simply I would say yes, because I would love some input from people that look at downtown USA and give us input.
Mr. Bradburn.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of contained in the comprehensive plan from 2010.
Okay, let me keep going. So those are 2009 and 2010, just so everybody heard that. Thank you for those who answered my question. One more item I would like to ask, simple yes or no question. Mr. Stricula, would you consider pausing this development to allow for more transparency, more open government, more collaboration, more teamwork, more community involvement before voting and moving this development forward?
Mr. Cafaro, when you put it that way, yes.
Mr. Gill.
I guess my response is.
I've got limited time. Just give me a yes or no real quick.
Well, Ed.
Oh, okay, this doesn't
Ed,
count? All right.
Certainly don't want to take away from his time, but as I said earlier, this is a visionary process as I see it. The question for us is, how do we vision development of downtown Mason, and how do we spark that opportunity? How do we bring it together? If you let me answer his question, I'm trying to do that.
I'm sorry,
Let him talk,
Vice Mayor. Audience, you know better, please.
Yeah.
Quiet.
So I think there's a sense that we are finalizing what this may look like, and we're not. This isn't the end of a process. This is the beginning of a process. And I think I've heard all of you say we want to see our community develop and grow. And I see this as an opportunity to do that. So I think our question here is, are we going to continue to develop a vision for how Mason grows? And I can tell you, I'm committed to see that vision come together. So that's my answer.
Are you a developer, Mr. Gilb?
I'm an attorney.
Okay, I was just curious.
I've worked with
that meant a lot when someone asked Sherry, so I just wanted to check. Okay. Mr. Gilb.
If you let me answer. So
yeah, go ahead.
So certainly I am an attorney. I've worked with many developers developing many projects, and so I certainly understand the process.
Okay. Mr. Honorlaw?
Sure, I didn't realize we're going to have this back and forth. Your questions are...
Neither did I. I asked for a yes or no question.
To ask each one of us that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's ironic, especially with how many meetings you've attended yourself and how many conversations we had, you act like you don't realize what's going on here. And then you're asking these questions trying to get people on record. So keep in mind, all right, this process started back in 2017 or 2018. Before I was on council, there was talk of a downtown development deal, okay? Downtown, nobody knew anything about it. There were certain council members, we got the vice mayor, the former vice mayor in the back, and council members here, that were all okay with doing this whole process, and nobody knowing anything about it, right? And then it was going to come forth after our council meeting, executive session, we were going to vote on it. In the dark of night, nobody was ever going to hear anything. The most untransparent thing out here, right? Mr. Strickler wasn't on council at the time, but the others were. So now, here's something that's been transparent from the beginning. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how many meetings, public meetings, have we had on this? How many of you just didn't know? But I guarantee you, Ms. Taylor back there knows, because she attends most of them, okay? It's been going on. I'm thinking we've had 40 public meetings on this. 40. We meet monthly for our downtown committee meeting, and we've had all these other committee meetings. It's a bunch. This is not.
Mr. Honorlaw, you haven't shown up to a downtown committee meeting with an agenda since I've been attending in May.
And I understand that, and that was answered for you too. So I thank you for, again,
Okay.
to ask a question that you already know the answer to. So that was answered because normally the council members don't always bring the agenda, okay? The city brings forth who they have for us to talk to at that time, and then we review what the city has and whoever they have for us to talk to. Okay? Is that fair? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Let me just tell you. Okay.
Can I move on with my,
No,
I have just a couple more things
no, I
to
won't
say.
finish my point. You're on
All right.
pause for a second,
Yeah.
anyway, so you got your time, right?
Keep talking.
So we've had former council members that are on, or council members that used to be the downtown committee, right? So there's been stuff we've been working on for the downtown for a while and making some progress. But this project, to get back to your original question, started in executive session, okay? There's no public meetings for executive session, okay?
So how has it been transparent?
This developer comes to us because we own the land and starts talking to us in executive session. We can't go public with this, okay? Nobody could. Some leaked, but it's like we're not supposed to talk about this process, so we cannot get competing ideas or developers. You're going to look at this deal where he owns the key piece of property, and you're either going to say this is what's best for Mason, depending on how it works out, or it's not. But you cannot do this game you're playing right now with this question.
You're the one who told me in our conversation in June. Okay, thank you. Mayor Grossman, would you posit for more collaboration from the city?
Mr. Cafaro, I think that it's not a simple yes or no answer.
Okay.
Some
Thank
here
you.
have created a either or, and I'm asking you, why can't it be a both and? Who defines why the process stinks or how it stinks or what the process should be? What is the common language? What is the common definition of community input and collaboration? Why do you get to say it's not transparent when I've been unprecedentedly transparent with the community over this? We brought this out last November. However, 2 years ago, practically to right now, we had a committee meeting, a downtown committee meeting about this. Has been very open. You heard Mr. Cohen state he's had over 80 meetings, private meetings with people downtown or with people here. There has been nothing hidden, but we couldn't negotiate out in the open, and we couldn't negotiate the acquisition process out in the open. So I think the answer needs to be both and. Why can't we hear this community input today? Why do we have to stop time and space because some people think the process stinks? Well, I'm gonna guess it kind of stinks for this developer who's sunk in hundreds of thousands of dollars and 3 years of his time on this, and we have a group of people who are against it because they want something else. And I don't believe that that is right of you to do, Mr. Cafaro, and frankly, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. You've not treated this individual well. You've given more value to people as stakeholders who haven't risked a thing. And I don't think there's any regard for someone who has risked something. And so to keep drawing this out and out and out, I'm trying to look at the whole picture, and I'm trying to make it a both and I'm trying to deal with a lot of negative input from people since last November, and even before that. I would say since April of 2020. That's when I started noticing the leaks, early April. I saw them on social media. I have saved that evidence. I think that we need to just make it a both and I'm sorry I've gotten a little off track from your question, but the answer is yes and yes. And let's go on to the next person.
Mrs. Nelson, Ms. Nelson.
Absolutely. I think we should pause it. And I think it's really important that everybody understands there's a difference between a comprehensive plan and a master plan for the downtown. The comprehensive plan is a plan for all of Mason. A master plan focuses solely on the downtown, which we have never had, unfortunately. We absolutely need to pause this. If we've had this going on for 3 years and none of the community knows about it, shame on us, because we did not engage the public properly. And I disagree with the 3 years. We have not been talking about this for 3 years. I mean, I didn't see some of this until today, or yesterday actually, for the first time ever. So, and I haven't seen any of this contract either until this week. So this is going way too fast. It's not really what the public wants. It's not really what a number of council members want, but you're pushing the agenda, and it's gonna pass because you're pushing it. So my answer is yes, we should be pausing, absolutely.
Chance.
Sure, yes. One, we lose every ounce of leverage when we negotiate with a developer. We're not going to win any leverage because it's taken away right from the very beginning. And secondly, and I think everybody, if you've listened to this discussion, so to be fair, Mayor, I've said it, and Mr. Cohen, I've said it to you plenty of times. If this is the right plan for downtown, where do I sign? Let's go. But first of all, and I appreciate you bringing this up, we're not developers up here. And we're called to be good stewards of the community, of all the stakeholders down there, the residents, the community, and the business owners. And so a simple answer is yes, it's much more involved, much more in depth than that. But, you know, when we lose our leverage from the very onset of it because of what Mr. Hunterlaw pointed out, that it was done behind the scenes, so absolutely. And I think there's plenty of opportunity for that. I really do. So that's my simple answer is yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bradburn.
I have enough information to make a decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cafaro, I'm looking at the clock, and I'm looking at my list. And
Yep.
we're going to have to wrap this up.
Yep.
We've
Give me
got several more
one
people
more second.
that haven't had
I
a
was
chance.
worried about with Mr. Honorlaw talking.
All right. Kathy Harbison, you're up, followed by Margie Murray, Mark Lortz, Kevin Carroll, I think, and then Mike Droege. And then I'll open it up to anyone who didn't sign up. Oh, he is? Thank you. Okay.
Kathy. No. Just press play on that. Go take your turn. Do you have the overhead?
Ms. Harbison, my apologies. Ms. Harbison.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Jennifer informs me that he has about 2 minutes left.
Okay, sorry.
Well, that looks flattering. Okay. Do you want to go first and then have him finish?
Let him finish.
You want to let him finish? Okay.
Let him, Chris finish.
Can we get the microphone over here, Kurt?
And I want to advance and help create a better culture of ethics, transparency, and government openness that results in respectful collaboration on council, with accountability to the public and engagement with our residents to make Mason the best city that it can possibly be.
Ms. Grossman, can I actually ask you a follow-up? We'll give you an extra 15 seconds. So we asked for your top priority. So I think you mentioned preserve, grow, and advance were the top three. Could you narrow that down to your top priority for us out of the three?
Wow. The top priority, I think, is getting it right at home, taking care of our house, to build on what Mr. Stricula said. When we start with open government and community engagement, we're going to make the best choices possible, and that is grounded in a good culture, a sound culture of collaboration and ethics. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bradburn?
Well, I had three. I basically put it down to community input. We are elected by the people, and we at times make decisions, or decisions are made with not enough input from the citizens. But the citizens is just not the people that vote, this is also the businesses.
Thank you. Ms. Harbison.
My name is Kathy Harbison. I am a lifelong resident. I grew up in downtown Mason. I'm a current downtown business owner and a current downtown property owner. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and for this session today, for us to all come together and voice our opinions and our concerns. And I hope that all on council will listen to this. Councilman Gilb, this was not on but you talk about the vision. I appreciate that. To me, after hearing all this, I hope you see this is not just about vision. This is already out there. This is a project. That's another thing I want to address. I have been sitting on the Downtown Committee of Council for many years. Councilman Hunterlow, you're right. Mr. Cohen did come and did present, and if you go on record, if you had notes, you would see that my comment was, I'm not saying I'm against this, but I'm against the process because it needs to be part of a larger plan, not just piecemeal. And here we are, 3 years, 4 years, whatever later. We recently heard presentations, and it was referenced by Chris in the Downtown Committee of Council from 2 different companies. One, an urban design practice, and one of the things he said is, we need someone who, every community you need is someone who is waking up every morning thinking about the area and downtown. That was a common theme with the other developer who said, someone who is waking up every morning and thinking about downtown. And all due respect, and out of all of the accomplishments for Michelle and our economic development director, I don't know that her focus has been on small business or on the downtown, and I don't know that that's in her wheelhouse. So again, I would urge council to consider these things, that two different people that you brought, that the city brought to the meeting, and what they said. They also said, plan, build demand, start small, and then develop. It seems to me like we're doing it the other way around. Know your starting point, what are the issues? Meet the people where they are. Another one of the other developer that you brought, or that develops comprehensive plans, said community should drive the development. What is the vision? What's the strategic plan? And what is the role of the city? I've also been on the zoning work group. Sherry mentioned it before. And from that, the work group, we met a couple of times. We did a walkthrough. We discussed architecture, building size. We had 2 meetings in 2019. The last one, November 2019, where 2 people showed up, myself and Mr. Williams. Then COVID hit. Then a meeting in May of 2021, which was with a 10-day notice prior, only a few people showed up. There was supposed to be another work group, but instead the public input was held on August of 2021. The work group has not yet convened again to discuss the walkthrough or any of the information that we gathered. So where are we now? It's not community-driven. The city is driving the process at this time. As we all know, best leaders are those that listen and seek to understand. Over the last 5 years, my message has been the same. We need revitalization in our downtown, or uptown, as some of us used to call it. We should honor the past while looking forward to the future. We need to seek to understand and get input from stakeholders, which are property owners, residents, and business owners. We need a vision with a plan. We need to stop piecemealing and just putting up buildings. There's a role for everyone. The city should get out of the development business. There needs to be private-public partnership. The only reason that I am not in favor of the development at this time is because it is being rushed through. I don't know if this is a good plan or not for Mason, as others have said. It is not part of an overall vision or strategic plan. In addition, I am not in favor of the city giving property away. As a small business owner, I bought my property, I pay my taxes, I accept responsibility for maintaining my property, and that includes replacing sidewalks, gutters, etc. We have got to put politics aside and find ways to work together. Maybe this is the right development again for our community in the future, but slow down, do it right. I love my community. I have been here my whole life. Let's not mess this one up.
Thank you, Ms. Harbison. All right, Margie Murray, Mark Lortz, Kevin Carell, we're under the gun on time, so if we could keep that moving, and if you've got comments that are shorter than 5 minutes, that would be helpful, but it's okay if they're 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Margie Murray, and I live in Mason, Ohio, on Richmond Park Drive. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to address the council and everyone here. I think what I'm seeing tonight is I feel like we're making progress. I think having this discussion right now and hearing other people's concerns and everything is an important part of community development and working together. Our family's lived in Mason for 16 years, and we frequent Milford and Loveland a lot. A lot of it's the bike trail that draws us. We spend a lot of time there. There's a lot of quaint restaurants, and there's older buildings, there's newer developments. I think they all do retain their own unique character. So living so close, I'm within walking distance of downtown Mason, and I've often thought, wow, it would be nice if, sometimes we walk to like Two Cities Pizza and stuff, but it would be fun to have more activity-related things in the downtown area that creates even more of a draw. I see this area and this development as potentially creating that. I do think there's a lot of questions, especially about travel around there and school, especially during school hours, traffic, parking. All these issues have been brought up tonight, and I definitely think they need to be addressed in a very effective way. But I do see it also as adding to the interest in Mason, the development, and the interest of investors in Mason. I think it would draw more investors if there was more vitality in Mason. As we can see, the utilities are past due on their updating, and even the roads. And I almost think, like, if there's more development and there's more energy downtown, you're going to see some problems that we have now alleviate, just because there's going to be more people, there's going to be more activity and more of awareness of what's going on in the downtown area. So, and it also, the other thing that it takes to develop all these, the development that everyone's talking about is revenue. And I see this as a pretty generous offer to develop in the area. And I think we need to explore it further. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Mark Lortz. And then Kevin Carroll, you're on deck.
My name is Mark Lortz. I live at 5145 Minuteman Court and also am the minority owner of the Common Beer Company. I really don't have much to add tonight. I normally like to come up and talk and wax poetically, but I think the residents and the business owners that we've heard tonight have said everything that I could possibly say and more. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and basically voicing the concerns that a lot of the small business owners that I know have and a lot of the residents around the area have. So I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out and supporting us and coming to the Common Beer Company and having these discussions and listening to us. So the only thing I'll end with is just what everyone else is saying. All we're asking you to do is just take a breath. Just take a breath. We're not saying that the Cohen deal is the bad deal. We just want you to take a breath, listen to more people, listen to more input, and then let's make a decision together, not unilaterally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lords. All right, Kevin Carroll?
I'm Kevin Carroll. I live at 7851 Yellowwood Drive in Mason, over in the White Blossom community. I have a background in finance and development. I actually oversee over 100 properties for my company for real estate, either leasing, owning, and further development. So I do have a little bit of a background on how things work. Mr. Cohen, I appreciate what you've done. And one of the things we have to realize is the rendition that he showed is something he's thinking now. Hopefully, I see him taking copious notes. So he should be going back and maybe making changes so that what you see today may not be what is shown tomorrow. The other thing too is it's normal to the cities to provide concessions to get development to happen. Whether or not they're appropriate or how we're doing it, those things do happen. So it is part of the process. But what I would say is the thing that's a little bit surprising for myself is having one bid. Typically, you go out, and even Mr. Cohen, when he goes out and everything is finalized, and we go out and he decides which subcontractors he uses, he will go out and have multiple bids, and he will look at who the best person is for each job. Those renditions that he showed, having multiple developers looking at it, you'll get a different feel and a different look on what things will happen and how you're doing it. Having one bid, you're really getting yourself locked in on that one perspective and not seeing what other things could happen or can be realized. I think everybody here and everybody's said it, I spend a lot of time at the local establishments. Everybody in the area is agreement. We'd love to have the vibrancy of a Loveland, and having people coming there and having people keeping our disposable income, spending it in Mason and not spending it in other places. But we have to be able to develop that plan and make sure we're moving forward of the right way. And having one bid, to me, just from a professional level, is basically locking yourself in to something that could be different and could be something that everyone will have. That's it.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you tonight, Mr. Carroll. And is there anybody who wanted to speak who did not sign up? We have just a couple minutes left, and maybe you could just speak for a couple of minutes. Okay, I see one hand. I see two hands. So how about you, ma'am? I forgot your name. Susie, and then Mr. Seitz, and then we'll see how much time we have after that. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed someone. Okay, sir, if we have time, you can go third. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susie Lertzman. I live at 7343 Red Oak Court in Mason. I'll say again, take a breath. Everyone said that. I have to say that one of the things that no one's brought up that it kind of confuses me, which is looking at the ordinance 2021-92, it says we're entering into a development agreement with Keystone Lot. As I understand a legal agreement, which could be wrong, once we've agreed to let him develop it, according to the vision that has been set forth, it could be changed. We're still in agreement. We would really like to have more input from the community on what we would like to have downtown be. I didn't grow up here. I moved here and I didn't like it at first. Then I started making friends on downtown and thought, this isn't too bad of a place after all. I want to keep that feeling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susie. And we have lots of contingencies built into that development agreement. And yes, there are some things about it that can change, but there's a structure in there that protects the city. Mr. Seitz.
Rick Seitz, 7556 Central Park Boulevard. So I'm a developer. I'm a competitor of Mr. Cohen. I've never worked with the guy. I don't know him from Adam. I would like to have had a chance at this project. His project is going to be a direct competitor of things that I'm doing in the area. That being said, I think that it's important for our community that we have a vibrant downtown and that we do take it to the next level and we stay competitive and we make people want to live here and we keep our home values up and we make it a wonderful community that we all dream of. Just sharing a little bit of my personal experience in talking to different community members and people about this, I think a lot of people do want this. I think the concern is that we do it the right way, that Mr. Cohen is the best developer, and from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we don't really have a choice because Mr. Cohen owns a key piece of the land. Is that correct?
Yes, he owns that piece in the middle.
Okay, so then we have to work with what we have. What I'm concerned about, and I think that what we as a community need to be concerned about is vetting this developer or whoever else is going to do it, or if he backs out, that it's somebody that has the financial wherewithal to do this properly, that if COVID hits or there's another big economic downturn, that he has the financials to weather the storm. I think that we need to have somebody that has proven their ability to do this successfully repeatedly. I think we need to have somebody that can bring in the right tenant mix. The last thing that I want to see or my customers want to see is another TJ Maxx. So I think we need to know who are the tenants that he's going to bring in and what type of tenant mix can we expect, because I think a lot of us would like to have a certain tenant mix and like to not see another tenant mix. The other thing that I would say, you guys are in a very precarious position. You know, I've been a part of many projects and I have pulled projects from city councils and townships when things got too difficult or when you were uncooperative. Or when you were too demanding. And I'll give you an example. A perfect one is out in Miami Township. We put together what we thought was a wonderful mixed-use development, and they drug it out and drug it out and drug it out. And finally, I said, this is enough. And if you drive by there today, you will find hundreds and hundreds of self-storage units. So you're in a tough position because we want the time to make sure this will be done right. At the same time, we don't want to mess it up. So I don't envy any of your positions, but I would ask this. I would like Mr. Cohen, or if you, Mrs. Mayor, could encourage him to maybe do an informal town hall with us where we can just converse with him, maybe set something up in the very near future to kind of discuss these things and share our concerns. And I, for one, I don't know, the gentleman that spoke before me, who's in the development business, I get it. It's a conceptual plan at this point. I'm not thrilled with the look of it. I think we can do better in Mason. I would like to see something maybe a little bit more nostalgic and befitting our community. So I would love Mr. Cohen, if is he still here? Are you still here? If maybe he would be willing to agree to a, just like an informal town hall meeting with us so that we can give you some of that feedback. If you're the guy, if you're the developer and you own the land and we don't have a choice, no worries. Good for you. It was brilliant. I wish I would have done it. But I would love to have a chance to give you some feedback and have some of the other members share feedback. Is that possible?
Yes, and in fact, in the development agreement, there's a charrette period built into it, encouraging or having the developer host some community input times, but
so can we do that sooner rather than later?
We can.
Like, just make it informal, but it doesn't even involve you guys? Like, let us figure it out and run it?
We'll work on that.
Okay.
We'll work on it. I mean,
Do you?
if
No
it
offense, I
doesn't
mean,
pop up, then we'll have to ask him. But
Yeah.
you know, but I know he's been working hard and meeting with people all over the community.
Yeah, and I'd like to just get something on the record. There's been a lot of people, including people here tonight, that have said things that you secretly own businesses in downtown Mason, and I'm talking to you, Mrs. Mayor, that you own businesses in downtown Mason secretly, that you secretly own the land, that you have business dealings with Mr. Cohen. I would like to hear on the record in front of everybody, is any of that true?
That is not true, and I filled out an affidavit verifying that fact, as has everyone on our council filled out a potential or actual conflict of interest affidavit so that we are disclosing any financial or family relationships that we might have with the developer. Everyone had none who's been involved in this negotiation process, and of course that includes me. I have no financial or close friendship or anything of that type with this developer.
Okay, thank you. So if that's the case, I would like to respectfully ask the community to quit spreading those rumors because it's going to tear us apart. I think it's unethical. I think it's low, and I think that we're better than that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Seitz. And I saw those rumors on the Facebook page that was posted by, I believe, the CDC people, the Mason Downtown Mason stakeholders page. I saw those rumors over the weekend. I've been carefully checking because I want to know what the input is. I want to hear the community input. All right, it is just about 7 o'clock. We had one more person who raised his hand in the gray t-shirt, and then maybe we can wrap it up with a word from Mr. Cohen, and then we've got to adjourn and go into another meeting that we have on the schedule. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'll be quick. My wife and I have been a resident since 2000.
Could you state your name and address for the
I'm sorry.
please? Thanks.
My name is Chris Kirkram, and I live at 300 East Main Street. I'm in the famous Cedar Shake bungalow with the white picket fence, right across from Dawson.
It's a beautiful home.
I just literally found out about this today when my wife sent an email to me at work. I've been up since 3 o'clock this morning. I've got narcolepsy. I should be in bed. But I felt this was too important to miss. And the biggest concern that I have since we've lived here is the traffic. East Main Street, they years ago put a speed sign up. Police cars were going by. My oldest daughter had her video. They were doing 90 miles an hour. Police cars. It was pitch black. I see old people. I have old neighbors that back out of their driveway. They could have been T-boned and splattered. They turn our 2-lane road into 4-lane. Numerous times we've tried to pull out of our driveway or pull in our driveway, and when they're coming into town from Lebanon, they automatically make it 2 lanes, and if you don't see that car, it's shame on you because they're going to hit you head on. So that is one of my biggest concerns is the traffic flow in Mason. It takes me sometimes a half hour to get from Fifth Third Bank through Mason Montgomery Road, and that's at 3:15, especially now with the school buses. So, also one other thing, years ago, a group of neighbors, we have dual zoning on our properties. Now, from what I was able to pull up from the email, I'm now considered an R4. Is the dual zoning gone? Because there was probably 9 or 10 of us that joined hands and went through the city and got dual zoning on our property. So we could sell residential or commercial. That's something you guys can do some homework on.
Well, we need to look at the chart. I think, and I don't have it handy right now. But, okay,
Yeah, we can look at it. I think he's talking about the downtown overlay, and if he was in the overlay, he's still in the overlay.
okay, if you were in the overlay, then you're still in the overlay. Okay, oh my goodness, I got one more guy coming up for just a quick minute.
Hello, Council. Again, Ryan Cleary, 5156 Minuteman Court, Mason, Ohio. You mentioned something earlier that kind of resonated with me, Mrs. Mayor, when you said professionals use data, and professionals do not use data from 2010. I can certainly assure you that professionals do not negotiate with one firm. I please ask that you take this in mind when you make this decision, because the traffic concerns that I have for downtown Mason are similar to most everyone here. Mr. Seiler and your team are amazing. The police in Mason are amazing. They actually have data that you could pull right now because they have 20 different speed signs around the city that they have there for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. So there is data. Mr. Cohen, I respect what you're trying to do here. I applaud the opportunity that you've been given, quite amazing. But most importantly, as a professional to another, I would also recommend you pulling these traffic numbers and wanting to know the study, because we really do struggle with a traffic issue here in Mason that should have been addressed well before we've gotten to this point. Everyone here has sat through traffic in Mason, and this here development is, if you have a plan in place, you should be showing that quickly, because this plan is only going to make our lives much more difficult with traffic. I wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cleary. We are updating the comprehensive plan. That's in the works. And we are committed to studying and improving that traffic. And my whole first 4 years on council, we had the same mayor and vice mayor, and I pitched that over and over again, and we didn't move forward on traffic, but we are committed. I know I am committed to addressing that. It is long overdue. Okay, it is actually, speaking of long overdue, it is after 7. So council, I'm sorry that our time ran short, but we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, our technicians upstairs need a few minutes to regroup.